Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting, and I would like to take a few minutes to review our general operating procedures. An application on the agenda will be called. The applicant gives his or her name once you come to the podium for the record, then makes your presentation. Now, the board members will ask questions, if any. Members of the public will make their comments. The standard rule of moving forward with this process is that only 4 people will speak in favor of an application and 4 in opposition. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the board. And after 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak at this point. And please summarize your comments at that time. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. So if you intend to speak, please come to the podium and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to this board only and not to the applicant or the audience. Please direct any and all questions of the applicant or the staff directly to the board. And please speak directly into the microphone. After hearing the application, the board will go into deliberations. In deliberations, the board members will discuss the application with input from staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The chair will then call for a motion and vote. The Board of Zoning Adjustment is a 7-member board. Please note that approval of a variance requires a minimum of 5 affirmative votes. All decisions of the board are final. If there's anyone aggrieved by the decision of the board, they may appeal to the circuit court within 15 days of the board's decision. Also, no permits or licenses can be issued until after the 15-day appeal period has expired and no appeal has been filed. Okay? So, if you have any questions on our decision or an appeal to the circuit court, the Office of Land Use Administration should be the one that you contact. Amen? I think I'm in church saying amen, huh? But at any rate, we're going to call the roll. And our chairman is not here today, William Guest, Vernon Coleman, here. Louis Golden, here. Adam Metcalf, here. Jeremy Milling, here. John Burrows, here. And I'm Sanford Davis, Vice Chairman and presiding officer for this session. The first item up for this meeting today is a holdover, and it's number 6259, case number 000-915-2019, Les Robinson, LCC, James Hughes. Please come. Good afternoon.
I'm a holdover, like you said, from the previous month. I was asked to go to visit the neighborhood association down by the bay. I believe that's correct.
Yes.
I attended that meeting, which was the last Monday of June.
Could you please take your name and address?
I'm sorry, James Hughes, 209 South Cedar Street.
Okay, your application is before us today, and it comes with the recommendations to the board with the following findings of facts for denial. Would you like to express to us why we should look at it otherwise?
I'm asking for three things. First being the area of the lot to use around 60% rather than 51%. We are making improvements, redoing the city sidewalks on the Elmira Street side that I'm redoing. I'm also redoing all of the curb, and I'm also replacing the gutter closest to, the storm drain closest to the entrance going into the proposed site. I am replacing some of that pipe as well as the box due to years of tree roots and whatnot, leaves clogging the system up. It will not, we are not able to dump our assigned stormwater into that area if it's not approved. So we are improving that at my cost, at no cost to the city as well as the sidewalks as well. We are also doing enhanced landscaping, planting trees in and around the subject lot.
Yes, sir. Excuse me for interrupting, and please excuse me for not acknowledging our attorney, which is James Rossler. He's sitting in as our counsel for today. Please excuse me, counsel, for overlooking that. Please continue.
Can we
Yes,
get
sir.
you to talk to the mic a little bit? Some of us is old.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So maybe I can stand away and you can still hear me. So that's the issue with asking for the site coverage to increase the site. On the fence, we're asking for an 8-foot privacy fence rather than a 6-foot fence around the property, as well as an 8-foot metal fence or aluminum fence to go around at the front and in the parking lot area. And the third thing is we're asking for a larger sign. I just want to put a monument sign on the corner of Elmira and Broad. I'm not asking for any signs on the building itself. I'm just asking for a larger monument sign. I'd like to do 64 square feet on each side for the monument, rather than having a sign on the building, like the CVS sign on the corner of Broad and Government, it's going to be a lot smaller than that.
Is that it?
Those are the three
Yes,
three
sir.
things. Yes, sir.
Any questions from?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in your opening remarks, the mic wasn't on, and I don't think you actually finished. When we left here last time, you were asked to go and contact and meet with the Down the Bay community. Can you tell us more in depth what happened there?
I contacted Ms. Beverly. She was the president. She told me when the meetings were, they meet every last Monday of the month. I went to the James Seals Community Center, and myself and 3 other people attended that meeting. I gave them just basically a brief synopsis of what we're doing on the property, how we were going to convert the property from a vacant lot to a storage facility. They seemed to be in favor of it. They didn't have any issues with the new development at all, especially after I showed them a picture of what the building was to look like, which is what we're trying to make it look like, an older historical building.
Right, thank you.
I have a question for you. How did
Yes, sir.
you notify the people west of Broad Street when you first began? Did you send letters out?
The city sent those letters out. Yes, sir.
Did the city send the letters on the other side of Broad Street?
I might have to let the city.
Mr. Chairman, I think can offer a lot of information on this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Burris.
Is that all right, Mr. Cole? I think I can offer something to help you too. Well, let's talk about Miss Crandall. She's I talked with Miss Crandall at length. Matter of fact, for about an hour on the phone the other night. And she and I done a little research. First of all, I'm going to abstain from voting on this particular request without prejudice to the claim. I'm just going to abstain for personal reasons. We've talked with several of the neighbors that in there, even the Oakley Garden District people. They don't seem to have a problem with it. And there's a couple of neighbors in there that is in residential housing right close to it, you might say, that can see it. They don't seem to have any objections to it, but I do personally, but I don't want the board to, I'm going to abstain my vote without prejudice to the application. In other words, I don't want to hold him with prejudice. I'm just going to bow out. I guess I have that legal right to just bow out of the voting.
Okay, any other board members? Anyone in the audience that's in favor of this application,
Yeah, okay, that's
would
right.
like to speak?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Since I'm going to extend, and I gotta move.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hughes, as far as can you clarify on the signage? You said there's going to be no signage on the building, which, so it will not look,
Preliminary design.
what's that?
It was a preliminary design.
Okay, so it will not say Cube Smart or self-storage. It'll all be
Well, it'll say Cube Smart, but it'll say it on the monument.
on the
sign.
monument side, not on the facade. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anyone in favor of the application at this time? Anyone in opposition? All right, sir. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Board discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think the applicant has done a very good job in preparation for this, especially the second go-around, and I believe that the development of this would actually be an enhancement to the corridor, especially with what's going on with it, with the Tiger Grant, the improvements that are going to be made, and with that, I move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. You heard it as stated. Are you ready for the question?
Yes.
All in favor, let it be known by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposes?
Ooh.
Hearing one, that, according to my understanding, automatically puts the application in denial. The application's been denied. Thank you. All right, Mr. Burrows, you can join us. Now, we're moving to public hearing now, and we're calling case number 6260, 000-924-2019, Branch Towers, the third LCC, David Wilkins, agent, 3168 Midtown Park South. Please come.
I'm David Wilkins, agent for Branch Towers and T-Mobile. And we've got some opposition here, and right now, I'll just say we agree with the staff recommendation to approve, and I'd like to let the opposition speak, and then I can respond, if that's okay.
Yes, sir, but give us your address.
Oh, P.O. Box 1038, Gulf Shores, 36547.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Before we hear the opposition. Is there anyone in favor of this application that would like to speak? Hearing none, then the opposition, if you would, please come.
My name is Gaylord Lyon. Is this the mic right here?
Yes.
My name's Gaylord Lyon. I'm here to oppose the application for variance for T-Mobile cell tower at 3168 Midtown Park South. My building is next door to this proposed cell tower. First of all, I want to show y'all a plat of the neighborhood. It's behind the new Bojangles restaurant. It's a circular neighborhood. It's about 50 years old. All the buildings in here are single story, with very little landscaping. This tower is going to be 150 foot tall with with antenna on top. There are covenants for this subdivision, which 3 or 4 of them are being violated if this tower is going to be built. It's in violation of the height, setback, planting and tree requirements. Gave y'all some pictures, some small pictures of the neighborhood. Yes, that's it. Okay, you can see where the tower's going to propose to be built. It's in a parking lot. It's going to be 150 feet above that parking lot. You go to the next page, you look at the street. Look at the buildings on the street. They're all single-story, owner-occupied. Not all of them are owner-occupied, but they're all single-story, small businesses. Very little landscaping. There are other places for this tower. Verizon is getting ready to build a tower on Red Cross behind the Greer's food store on the other side of Dolphin Street. That's a quarter of a mile away. I don't know if they put the tower on the Verizon tower or not, but the city is trying to have less cell towers, I think. It's a site behind the Rite Aid Shopping Center. The owner said they could probably put the tower there. The one by the Red Cross building is already zoned properly for this. There are 2 cell towers about 3/4 of a mile away. One's behind Dreamland. Look at the trees. It's in the middle of trees. It's hidden to some extent. The other one is behind Mobile Gas, behind the Mobile Gas parking lot. You can't see it for the trees hardly. And this is going to be in the middle of a subdivision with little landscaping and single-story buildings. Also, they talk about they want better coverage for their customers. They want, calls not to be dropped. Well, I had a T-Mobile phone. One of my employees rode around for a mile radius. We had 4 or 5 dots 90% of the time. The other 10%, we had 3 dots and no drop calls. So I'm not sure that's a valid argument. I'm no engineer, so I don't know the engineering behind that. There are other wooded areas in this neighborhood that could probably be a site. The owners, the building owners, there's about 16 owner occupants in this subdivision. Long personnel signed a petition, M.W. Rogers, Millwright Union, Houston Hollister, Padita Trucking. This is my building. The cell tower you can see is right there. It could fall on 5 different lots. It's so tight in there. You've got Danny Lipford, y'all know him, construction across the street. You've got Charles Mobley CPA, One Source Brokerage. It's a life insurance company, a dentist, Jim Blackman. Another office of Danny Lipford, Tom Clement, Southern Home, Stephen Baker, Baker Medical. All these people, not one owner occupant that's for this. 2 or 3 didn't sign the petition because they do business with the developer, but none of them are for it. 2 of the people who wouldn't sign did call the developer and say they were opposed but would not sign. Jim Fernandez is going to give you some more legal reasons why we think it shouldn't be built here, but I see no benefit to anybody in the neighborhood, and I'm not even sure T-Mobile couldn't go to another site. And plus, the Planning Commission has ordered a study to see if it's really the right site and necessary. Thank you. Y'all have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The cell towers under the current ordinance are allowed to 50 feet, correct?
He's talking to you, sir.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to hear
Staff,
what
I'm
you were
sorry,
saying.
I'm speaking to staff.
They're also regulated by the maximum height in the underlying zoning district, which this site is zoned B3, which limits it to 50 feet.
Okay.
The Board of Adjustment is then.
No, I understand. Are you aware that one could be put up that's 50 feet tall, that's without asking anybody?
50 feet?
50 feet.
Well, this is 150 feet. No,
I didn't ask
no,
that
I don't
question.
know.
I said, are you aware of that?
No.
Okay,
I
so,
mean, I'm new to this. I've been
okay, so if you look 50 feet, is it really that much different to look 150?
Well, we got some telephone poles that with a pretty high transmission line going through the neighborhood. They look pretty high. They're 85 feet. This is going to be twice as high.
That's right. Now,
transmission
of
line.
all the opposition that you said, the only thing I heard from you was it falling on somebody. That's all I heard. Is there what's the real opposition
Well,
to
it's
it?
violating setbacks.
I'm not asking that.
Right.
I'm talking about from an emotional standpoint. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, the people that own lots, run businesses in there, feel like it's going to devalue the property. I've talked to 2 MAI real estate appraisers.
Yeah, and did they say it would?
Yes.
Well, that's never been proven in court.
Well,
So-
okay, well, it's not going to help, you know.
Well.
It won't help, but
Okay, that's all.
Any other board members have any questions for this particular speaker? Yes, sir. Give us your name and address.
I'm Jim Fernandez, the law firm Fernandez, Crane and Combs. So I'm not located in that vicinity. Our office is at 28 North Florida Street. To answer your question, no, they do not have a right to put a 45-foot tower there. They must first get permission of the Planning Commission. This is in a permitted use area, and they don't have that yet. As Gaylord said, the Planning Commission's doing a study. There are 2 other sites. Gaylord mentioned those. If you want to find out, you can talk to Marl Cummings or Blackshear White Spunner. They're looking for 4 different variances, and it's not like an eave going 6 inches beyond where the property line is. They need a height increase from 45 feet, I think it's 45, they said 50, the statement in the thing says, but anyway, to 160 feet, which is a 355% variance from the ordinance. The side setback lines, and I've handed out some documents for y'all. Do you happen to have this site plan that you can take a peek at? It'll make a lot more sense if you look at that. It shows you where on the lot the tower is proposed. That's the same thing you've got up there. The requirement of the ordinance is that the pole be set back from each property line a distance the height of the pole. This pole is 15 feet from the back property line. That will require a variance of over 1,000% of what is required by the zoning ordinance. On the side, it's about 35 feet off of that line. It's not really the side line because that back line's curved, and it's about 50 feet on that side. So those are two more, 530% change from what's required by the zoning ordinance, and a 320%. Now, the only place you can put one of these towers by right is in an industrial zone. It happens that the Red Cross tower that Gaylord mentioned would be in an industrial zone. They're absolutely forbidden in any residential area. If you look at your zoning map, which I've also given you a copy of, something that doesn't seem to get mentioned is that the tower's located right here. Yes, it's in a B3 where it's a permitted use. Directly across the street is one B1, it's a B1 lot, a string of B1 lots. Yes, it's a permitted use in B1. but immediately one more lot away is an R1 district. Most basic residential district. It's surrounded on the other side by by an R3, another residential district. And as you can see, all this white area and this green area here, all that's residential. So they're not putting it in, dead in the middle of some B3 zone or anything else. They're right up next to the residential area. All these residents are going to look out and see it from their homes. And if you look at I think it's called a flume map, the future land use map, this doesn't change. It's going to be that way forever. So they can find a better site. Now, it's a 4G tower. Everything's going to be 5G shortly. 5G towers are about the size of a telephone pole. So it's going to be obsolete before you know it. And I know you don't like lawyers talking law, and so I pulled up Jim, what I think is the most recent case out of the Court of Civil Appeals on Board of Adjustments and what unnecessary hardship is. But this is the legal requirement, I believe. The primary question in variance cases is whether, due to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance will result in an unnecessary hardship. An unnecessary hardship sufficient to support a variance exists where a zoning ordinance, when applied to the property in the setting of its environment, is so unreasonable as to constitute an arbitrary and capricious interference with the basic right of private property. They do not have a hardship. They don't have an unnecessary hardship. Look on what you've got there. It is already being put to a B3 use. There's a building on it. They have no unnecessary hardship. They are asking for an additional use.
Just a minute, sir. Any questions for the speaker?
I'm sorry, any questions? Thank you.
All right, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I've got a question about, these come to the board quite frequently, and I'm looking at both. I don't know what exact question to ask, but I guess I'm gonna try to formulate it. Ms. Pappas, maybe you can answer this. It appears to me that every time these type towers come to the board, and we either disapprove of variance or approve of variance, if we disapprove it, then the legal framework is to go to the FTC, Federal Communications Commission, and then the Federal Reserve is going to overturn it. So my question, do we have any real statutes over these communication towers?
The board, if a party is aggrieved by the decision of the board, even if it is for a communications tower, the proper appeal is to the circuit court. So if a party's aggrieved by the decision the board renders on this tower, it would be appealed to circuit court.
So what are you're saying to me that this board really do have jurisdiction, can basically oppose a yea or nay on these type structures?
Only on what the board is being presented to consider, which are variances from the height, it exceeds 45 feet, the setback, because it is not set back at least 150 feet from the property line, and then they're not providing the landscaping and tree plantings. Those are all under the jurisdiction of the board, and the decision to appeal would be based on the board's decision. Everything else would be outside of the zoning ordinance, regulated by the Federal Communications Commission.
Anyone else? Before we hear from the applicant. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, the area we're looking for, just to tell you where T-Mobile's surrounding sites are, on north of Old Shell Road, just east of Dreamland, T-Mobile is on that tower to the north. To the south, there's a rooftop. It used to be called the First Federal Building. Now I think it's the Regions Building. It's a 140-foot rooftop. We have antennas on top of that building. To the east, down Dolphin Street, on the south side of Dolphin Street, east of Mobile Street, east of where the railroad tracks cross Dolphin, we have a site there. To the northwest, T-Mobile's on a tower up on Spring Hill College, back behind Spanish Villa Apartments, or they're condos now, I think. And to the southwest, south of Airport Boulevard on Downtowner Loop, we're tenants on that tower there. And some sectors of those sites, we have, T-Mobile has a, what they call a capacity problem, which is a good problem to have. There's so much traffic on their network that they need a site pretty much in the middle of those 5 sites to pick up additional capacity so that, you know, you don't try to get on your phone and can't use it for whatever purpose. So that's why we're in this particular site. Sometimes we come here, I think when we were here before the board for a site on Duval Street, the site on South Sage Avenue, the site on Azalea Road that were all approved within the last year, I think. We had to get, in addition to these, the normal height and setback variances, a variance for buffer from residential zoning. And in those cases, there was very little R1 use. Like behind Duval Street, there was a park. On Azalea Road, there was a church that was zoned R1. But anyway, we're far enough away from all the residential zoning districts that we don't need a separation buffer variance for this site. Talking about the buffer of as far as any landscape or trees or vegetative screening, if you look at the pictures that we submitted, the pictures that show are labeled looking west, looking northwest. There's where that big transmission power lines are. There's also a drainage easement in there. And if you look at those pictures, you can see there's a lot of vegetative screening to the west side. Where this, to the south, this, they said this was going to be in a parking lot. It's actually back behind the building in a storage yard that has a privacy fence. And then it's going to back up to 3 lots that, just the shape of this lots, there's sort of some triangle lots that it's going to back up to that are all zoned B3. And one of those owners has signed a petition in opposition, and the other 2 have not. The thing about concern about property values, you know, we put these in B3 zoning next to restaurants, offices, retail businesses, and other commercial uses, and we've never heard of any devaluing the property by having a monopole there. Actually, it's a very low traffic, quiet, you know, operation. Once it's built, there's hardly ever anybody ever go there. So anyway, we're just asking for the height and setback variances, as we always have to, because you can't find an area, especially in or a site in this area, where you would have 150-foot square or circle around the proposed tower site.
Okay, any questions for the applicant?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wilkins, as far as the comment about, I guess, co-locating on the site, the Red Cross site behind Greer's, Can you speak to that? I mean, is that a possibility?
Well, I talked to Marl Cummings. Gaylord called me and said, you need to talk to Marl. He's working on a deal with Verizon to put a cell tower somewhere back there behind, on Sage Avenue, back behind the Red Cross building. I talked to Marl. He was not very forthcoming about what's going on, what they're proposing, where they are in negotiations with that. That's probably too far east and too far north for T-Mobile's purposes. The other tower that was mentioned is back behind the gas company. And if you look at, I don't know if I know the staff has this, but there's our site on the south side of Dauphin, just east of Mobile Street. This tower would be, the Mobile Gas Tower would be way too far east and would not do the capacity offload that we're trying to accomplish with our towers, especially the ones to the northwest and the southwest. And so if you looked at the dots on the map where the existing sites are and where we're proposing, we're sort of dead in the middle of it. So that's how we ended up here.
What is from a practical standpoint, what is the radius, the search radius that y'all look in?
From say I-65 and Dauphin, you know, we could go maybe, I'd say 600 feet south of Dauphin and maybe that distance north of Dauphin. So it's a pretty tight search area, but that's because of what we're trying to accomplish, which is, besides capacity offload, provide better in-building coverage, because so many businesses and folks, you know, they use their cell phone in their offices and in their commercial buildings. They don't even, a lot of them don't even have landlines anymore.
Mm-hmm. And one other question I have, as far as the comment about the 5G technology and that this, you know, possibly becoming obsolete in the near future. Can you speak to that?
This is, in the 5G world, they're going to need, and I'm repeating what I know from looking over the shoulders of the engineers, so I'm not an engineer, but you still need macro sites, which is what they would call a 150-foot tower. And in addition to that, as 5G develops, they are going to have smaller cells that cover a much smaller area to provide, you know, faster data speeds and better coverage, you know, just in areas of city blocks, basically. So no, this would not be an obsolete tower. These towers, they wouldn't be putting it up if branch towers would not be putting this up if they didn't see that T-Mobile was going to be on it for decades, and that some of the other carriers, Verizon, AT&T, whatever, might be interested in co-locating on the tower also.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Sir, on the site plan, what we have called a detailed site plan here, there are two squares that say lease area future tenant. Do we know what that means? And how
That's
that
for
got there?
if Verizon or AT&T.
For their equipment?
Right.
Just
right,
for the equipment?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board members? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask counsel if he'd like to have anything to say to us at this point before we get into our deliberations as far as making a decision.
Just briefly, the city's telecommunications ordinance establishes a dual role for this board and for the planning commission. This board has, as Ms. Pappas pointed out, jurisdiction over the variance requests. After this board rules, whether you grant the variances or deny them, or grant them in part and deny some in part, the site plan, with or without those variances, would then go to the planning commission, who will look at the overall picture and then decide whether or not planning approval should be given for the site. So that's the dual roles. Then we briefly we spoke about earlier, the radius. The ordinance does require that an applicant seek co-location opportunities within a half-mile radius of the site, meaning that if there is an existing tower, they have to explore the opportunities to co-locate their facilities, their antennas, on that existing pole. We've looked at that and have not been able to identify, and perhaps the applicant could, clarify this, but we have not been able to identify any poles within that half-mile radius, any existing poles. So that's the legal framework. Important to remember that there's the dual authority between the Planning Commission and this board, but this board has the jurisdiction and the authority over the variances.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Jim, what is the Planning Commission's criteria in the, since this is a little bit different because it is telecommunications, what's their criteria? If we approved, let's say, what criteria would they judge this on?
Yeah, give me a second. What paragraph number? Oh, okay. So with it, what I was looking for was in the telecommunications ordinance. There is apparently none specifically dealing with this type of use. The general requirements for determining whether or not to give planning approval are set forth in the ordinance, and they consist of transportation and access, water supply, waste disposal, fire and police protection, traffic hazards, and any other consideration as to whether or not the use fits within the harmony of the orderly and appropriate development of that area.
Okay, so that's the one, that's the only one that's applicable.
That last one, that very general one, is the only one.
So unlike a typical variance, our decisions are not final in this one because the decision may be, but our decision could be overturned by the Planning Commission. It's not overturned, but just that step would not have been approved.
Yeah, your decision will be final on the variances.
Right, but there's another approval to get.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
And Jim, I don't know if this would be for you or for Margaret, but it's, because I sat in on part of the Planning Commission meeting. So it was voted to do an additional study on the Planning Commission level to determine what?
In general, it was to hire an independent engineer to review the applicant's application as it relates to compliance with the telecommunications section of the zoning ordinance. And that is something that we're in process on right now.
How long was that?
We're supposed to have something presented back to the commission by their August 1st meeting.
Counsel, is there anything else you need to add? I noticed the opposition dropped something on your desk there.
We're good.
We're good? We're good. We're open for discussion of the board at this point now as it relates to resolving this matter. Any further discussion of the board? If not, we will entertain a motion. We have finding of facts for approval on height, lease parcel setback, and tree and landscaping variance requests. Based upon the three items that have been outlined here, it is therefore the height, lease, parcel setback, and tree and landscaping variances are recommended for approval, subject to the following conditions that are outlined before us here. The Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Given several factors, one, that the staff recommended for approval. Two is that this board has consistently approved setbacks, setback variances for the towers and the heights of the towers. Nobody builds a 50-foot tower. They come, every single tower comes to us. And the fact that there is one more step to this procedure. If the, ours, I think, is more technical, and according to Jim, you say that the Planning Commission looks at, on that last criteria, gives them more of a broad view of it. So given all that, I recommend approval.
Is there a second? It's been motioned and seconded that this variance will be approved with the additional finding of facts and the conditions as outlined. If I'm understanding your motion correctly.
Yes.
You heard it as stated, or you ready for the question? All
Yes.
in favor, let it be known by the usual sign, aye.
Aye.
Opposers by the same.
Opposed?
Chair votes aye. One opposition. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. We're going to recess for about 10 minutes.
No, not that long.
5. 2, okay.
Well,
Call our meeting back to order, calling for case number 00934-2019, Rocco Signs for Rush Truck Centers Incorporated, 5500 Linwood Steiner Road. Name and address for the
Yes,
record.
sir. Wade Wright, Rayco Sons, 3345 Halls Mill Road.
We have before us, Mr. Wade, recommendations from staff for approval with certain conditions that's attached to it.
Right.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are you having opposition to the
No,
recommendations?
we agree with that recommendation.
You agree with the recommendation, all right. Anything further you'd like to say to the board?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Wade as it relates to this application? From the board, any questions? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion.
So, Mr.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
So moved. Is that a second?
Second.
Subject conditions said by staff.
Sir?
Okay.
Yeah, I was waiting on a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Coleman, and seconded by Mr. Millings. Heard it stated, are you ready for the question? All in favor of the user's sign of aye?
Aye.
Opposers the same? Hearing none, so ordered. Bless you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Number 5, we have 6263 000936 2019 Bird Surveying for Dalton Holdings LLC, 42, I'm sorry. Please excuse me, sir. Tony, 6262. I'm trying to get ahead of myself there. 000935 Tony Cooper.
Yes, sir.
5620 Sherman Road North. Your name and address for the board.
Yes, sir. My name is Don Williams, representing Tony Cooper, who is right behind me here. This lot is directly across the street. I was just noticing Rush Truck Service is across Highway 90, directly across from Tony's lot. To get your bearings on this, if you continue down south on Highway 90, go underneath I-10, on your right you'll see Apache Bishop Automotive. You'll get down to, just past Tony's site, you'll get to a Shell station and I think a furniture store. Across the street was Leon Atchison's furniture, I believe it was. So this is an area that is a industrialized type of a district. Most of this district used to be in the county until the city annexed it several years ago. And as such, most of the properties in there are industrial type properties, and they have very few, if any, trees. We have an issue here with a tree request. Is what we're looking for. I had passed out an aerial drone shot. I think passed out 2 of them, if you could see what we have here. Adam's got one.
Yeah, keep going.
And you see what's going on there. This is an aerial drone shot of the building. It's a 6,000 square foot metal building. Tony has a tenant who is ready to move into that site. And as you'll notice, he's on a corner lot, so he had to put in a lot of extra sidewalk to make the corner lot work. He also, if you look in the front, covered over an open ditch. There was this open drainage ditch that was all overgrown. Tony enclosed that, put storm drains in there, put a catch basin. And as you'll notice also in his frontage, he's got overhead power lines, some very substantial power lines there in the front. To one side, to the right side in the picture is New Horizons Credit Union, which has very few trees because it was not required to at the county at that time. And on the left side, he's got a Shell service station, which has very few trees also, which was also built when it was county. So Tony is coming in with, now it is the city, now he is required to do the tree compliance. That would be 25, as you noted in your staff report, 25 trees would be required. He's on a corner lot, and as a result, a lot of those have to be heritage trees. He has planted 12 of the 25 trees. He's planted all of the crepe myrtles as understory trees, and he's planted 2 out of the required 12 or so live oak trees. As the staff has noted, there's very little room when you get the overhead power lines along the side road. And you have underground utilities. He has underground water, electrical, sanitary sewer, water, phone, and storm drainage, which makes it very hard for compliance along the side. So the staff, and we appreciate this, has noted that, that they were saying, fine, we realize you cannot plant these larger trees there because of the roots getting into the infrastructure. We're pleased with that. But we did note in the last paragraph, while they do acknowledge that it would be hard to comply with that, and they are recommending, basis of fact, to not comply, they are recommending a payment to the tree bank of $200 per overstory tree, which is $3,200 a payment to be made to the tree bank. Our request is that that number be either diminished or eliminated. The reason being is, if you look closer in this picture, Tony has spent over $8,500 on landscaping. That is sod. That is by actual count, 125 shrubs, clearas, boxwoods, and about 12 trees in there. So he's already invested about 125 plants already in there. Sodded just about the entire lot. He is much more so than any of his neighboring properties in regards to trees. So our request would be, thank you for the elimination of the trees, but we would request that a elimination or reduction of the $3,200, since Tony has already spent several times on that already to make it look a very nice property, much better than it would have been otherwise.
Okay, any questions of the board for the applicant? Anyone in favor of the application would like to speak at this time? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, would you like to speak?
Well, just briefly, I want to just say that how much I do appreciate working with the city, and the folks down there have been very helpful and tried all the ways they possibly could to work with me. And for people that do know me, I don't try to skimp on things, but when you build a building and you get so, at the end of the day, my wife says, what do you got, a hole in the ground out there just throwing money in? I still got to make everything work. And I think I've improved the area a lot out there. So if it is possible that you could help me, every little bit helps. I'll do whatever you say. That's it.
Any questions of the applicant from the board? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in favor? Like to speak? Anyone in opposition? Okay. Any closing remarks, Mr. Williams, before we put it in the hands of the board? It's in the hands of the boards. What's our discussion on this matter? None, we entertain a motion.
I make a motion to deny based on economic. He's arguing an economic hardship.
So your recommendation is to go with the approved?
Is to go with the approved application,
Okay.
but not the reduced penalty.
So you don't want the conditions attached, or you do? The conditions.
Mr. Goldwyn, you're recommending approval as suggested by staff with the conditions as suggested by staff?
Correct.
Is that second?
Second.
Move properly seconded, you've heard it as stated. All in favor, let it be known by the usual sign. Opposed by the same, hearing none. Application is approved with the conditions attached. Thanks. Okay, number 6263, we're there, all right? Case number 000-9362019, Bird Surveying for Dalton Holdings, LLC, 4281 Alden Drive. Please come speak, give us your name, address for... Okay, all right, we have one abstention on this application here.
Good afternoon, Jerry Bird, Bird Surveying Company, 2609 Halls Mill Road, Mobile. For the owner applicant. Pretty simple request, one that's been granted in a lot of places around Mobile, and that is to use crushed aggregate for equipment storage, just temporary parking, not leaving it forever. But equipment storage and a lay-down yard for businesses that would need that. You have a handout that looks, it's an 11 by 17. It looks about like that. It came out earlier. Yeah. The property is this square with the X in it. That's the proposed site. All of the red that shows is Zone B3, which would require approval for aggregate. The blue is I-1, which is allowed by right. I'm only showing the I-1 consolidated piping, and Supply has it, and United Rentals, just to show that aggregate is in the area. It's being used on the laydown yards and equipment storage. But there are 5 businesses, including Christmastown, that are within an 800-foot circle that have aggregate driveways or parking maneuvering areas. There is another one on down Halt Mill Road. It's about 1,500 feet away. Chips Auto Glass down there. But aggregate doesn't hurt anything. This would be for like tracked vehicles to maneuver on, or possible parking generator, big like a welder might use, that kind of thing that would be used today. Go out on a job site maybe next week and stay there. But there are other back in the rear, back in here. There's some aggregate, especially around the Alabama Power Company substation. I don't know if there's any more. I was told that there's one business with aggregate here. I'm not sure. There is aggregate. Only new business that's right here. That's zoned I-1 though. But the use of aggregate for parking, maneuvering has been granted before, and that's all we're asking for. There'll be adequate, not adequate, be the required amount of landscaping, and the parking for the office workers and visitors by the required amount will be as per city code. It's just the remainder of that yard area we would like to have aggregate on. That's all.
Okay. Any questions from the board of the applicant at this point? Yes, sir.
Mr. Byrd, what is the operation of the business that's there? What will they be doing?
The business, the building will be for lease. At the present, we don't know the type of business, whatever is allowed in B3. But I think it would probably be an office warehouse type situation, similar to what's on the other side of Halls Mill Road and next door. Going down Alden Drive at this corner, there's a construction company here, which is the owner of this one. But these businesses are basically office warehouses.
Mr. Chairman, question?
Yes, sir.
So Jerry, to understand, there's no current use, there's no tenant,
That's correct.
there's no occupant?
They want to get it under construction and then start pushing hard to find somebody.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Do we folk require some bumpers or something to keep the aggregate from going out into the right of way?
The engineering department would have requirements that aggregate would not go into the right-of-way being tracked by vehicles.
Yeah.
But there would be sufficient, I think, hard paved area prior to the exit out onto Halls Mill Road. And then for this site, the aggregate area would be separated from Alden and the other property lines by a landscape area.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, anyone in favor of this application like to speak? Yes, sir.
Chairman,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can
I'm
I
sorry,
can I
yes,
ask
sir.
a question of Mr. Byrd?
Yes, sir,
While he's
Mr.
still
Engineer,
up here?
come
On your drawing here, it's showing proposed crushed limestone, but it doesn't show how big of an area. I mean, is that just the remainder of the lot, or?
I don't know. I don't know how much information may have been purged off of what we submitted. Staff report said there was 16,000 square feet of crushed aggregate. I take that, I'm not real sure. But there would be, like I say, there will be at least the required amount of landscaping for the site.
Okay, good. All right. Well, 16,000 square feet looks like it may fill up a lot of the area that's not building or pavement, so I was just asking. Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Tyler Pitts, address 4251 Alden Drive. I'm a co-owner of Dalton Holdings, the company that's submitting this. We've came in and taken this lot and a portion of Mobile that over time has been lacking for love, for lack of a better word. We're trying to develop this lot, bring some business back to the area. We're trying to do that in this little area as a whole. I know it has been, as I've listened earlier, you know, the request for a variance has been hinged on, you know, a hardship. In our opinion, as Mr. Byrd said, this is going to be a leased property. The hardship in that is that when you have adjoining properties in B3 and in that area, and they do have this aggregate parking, I know it doesn't seem like it is a big deal, but when we go to the marketplace for a tenant and they could or could not operate based off of what type of wheel traffic they could put in their parking lot or what kind of equipment they could unload and park there, it does put us at a significant disadvantage when we go to market with that if we don't have at least a certain portion of that lot, you know, where we could service a tenant that might need that. And I understand your question going into it, leading in, it's kind of difficult to say, you know, when you don't have a set in stone that says this is what's going to be there and this is what we're going to do. We're trying not to hinder ourselves in the future and bringing in, you know, business to this area by having a complete hard surface lot.
Any questions for the applicant before he leaves the podium here? Co-owner here.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else in favor? Anyone in opposition? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Angie McClaney, and my address is 3467 Sheldon Way. And if you will look right back at the map again, there's my neighborhood, Sheldon Way. And in implying that they are moving in to help promote businesses in this area, if you've driven down Halls Mill Road, you will see there are plenty of vacant businesses on Halls Mill Road right now. So it's not like people are looking for property to build a business on Halls Mill Road. I represent the concerned citizens in my neighborhood because we're very much opposed to this proposed variance. Our small, quiet, once fairly private neighborhood has just been exposed to the loud public Halls Mill Road thanks to the virtual clear cutting just done by these property owners. That we cannot help. However, we can hold them to the stipulations of the B3 Community Business District restrictions with your help. The current owners already owned a small office building with the proper paving on one corner lot. Before purchasing the additional land, their real estate agent contacted us about this particular variance. We explained that we were opposed to it for the following reasons. Number one, we were one of the last neighborhoods in Mobile to get a paved road. For years, we traveled down a gravel road upon leaving and returning to our homes. With gravel comes dust, dings, and windshield damage. Gravel is also hard on paved roads, pitting it and causing wear and tear. The buildings that he referenced, the businesses that do have it, were not Zone B3 and are not right next to a neighborhood or in a neighborhood like these are. And secondly, and most importantly, the new owners are telling us that they want this variance for one parcel of their newly acquired land. We all know that should this variance be granted, it would pave the way, pun intended, for the remaining lots owned by the current owner and the adjacent wooded lots that will eventually sell as well to more easily receive this variance. The owners purchased this property knowing full well of the stipulations of a B3 Community Business District. Out of respect for our families who are still trying to enjoy our homes in the midst of their construction and operation, please deny this variance.
Okay. Any questions for the opposition from the board?
I just have one question, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman. Looking at your letter that was signed, is it pretty much your entire family that lives along that
It just has happened to be that way. It sure is. We have a mother-in-law next door. My son has the house next to hers, and my husband's aunt is in the next house.
Gotcha.
And several of them are elderly, more elderly than me. So that's why I'm here to speak today.
Are there other non-family residents along that street? or-
That street, and there's one house that is unoccupied at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
And we use Alden Way to come and, to enter and exit our neighborhood. And then people along Halls Mill Road, I've had people from Revere to Sheen neighborhoods and other neighborhoods, once they knew what they were coming here today, they have emailed me in support because, again, let's be honest, an aggregate parking lot is ugly, but ugly. We want to maintain as best we can a B3 presence. We're trying to adapt to it, but we don't want this variance.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? Yes, sir.
John Williams, Mobile City Council, 3905 St. Andrews Loop. It happens to be the entrance to River to Sheen. And that's why my familiarity here. Y'all don't see me down here very often. I come down for two reasons. Either I go to the board or the planning commission because of a zoning change. That's when I believe that it is most important to listen to the people who live there. That's their one time when they ought to speak and be heard with regard to zoning. And then you have the extension of zoning, and that is the change of use or the allowance to do something different than what the code allows. In this case, pre-sale, as you heard earlier, there was a meeting between the developers and this neighborhood, which I facilitated. It was very clear of the opposition by the community. It is, as she stated, it's just a family community. It's one road of the McElhaney's. The piece that maybe is not clearly illustrated is that even though they knew that there was going to be opposition and that I would support the opposition, they went ahead and purchased the property. And everyone has a right to do that, knowing that there's a challenge, but then immediately clear cut. And when I'm talking clear cut, I don't know if there's a tree left. The couple on the edge, pine tree here or there, but otherwise it's dirt. And so this is what Ms. McElhaney speaks to when she says that we have folks driving down Halls Mill Road and recognizing a neighborhood they didn't even know it existed, and the neighborhood hears the traffic that they didn't hear before. What we did not hear in the applicant's argument is what the real hardship was. Knowing the conditions going in, it sounds to me like it's simply a competitive edge, and that's not what this board is about. This board ought to be looking to say whether or not this is an absolute hardship based on location or condition of ground or whatever it is that is faced by the applicant. Again, I don't come down here very often, but I could not. I originally told the neighborhood I was going to let them fight it themselves, but I simply could not do that knowing that I was involved all the way along. The developer, I wish there was something that I could do to make it easier for him. I applaud anybody that tries to go into business, but everyone along Halls Mill has had to stay with the code. Ferguson Pipe, big lay-down yard, not a quarter mile away. It's all concrete, all asphalt. So I just don't see the hardship, and I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilman, we appreciate you. Any questions for the opposition here before he takes his seat? What's your... Hold on, sir. You want to come down and you with the opposition? You with the opposition?
No, sir, not opposition.
Okay. You're in favor? You're in favor of the application?
Yes, sir. He can do the rebuttal.
Sir?
He can do the rebuttal.
He can do the rebuttal?
Yes.
Okay, you're gonna waive it to him, huh? You're gonna let him do it instead of you? Okay, that's fine, but just a minute before you come. Just a minute before you come.
Sir?
Just one moment before you come. I want to, just a minute before you come.
I'm sorry.
1 second.
Okay.
I want to make sure that the board had an opportunity, if there were any questions from the opposition. Councilman Williams, I want to give you a chance if you have anything to ask him or to say to him. Hearing none, please come. Give us your name and address.
Gentlemen, my name is Mike Pitts, and I own the building that's listed as contractor on Alden Drive. I'm the person who built that building originally 30-some-odd years ago. Whenever I bought that lot, I contacted the homeowners they're on Sheldon Way. The McLaney family owns most of those homes along there. And I didn't want to get into a rift or a dispute by coming and building an office in their neighborhood. I contacted those people and was told by each one, we signed a petition for that to go commercial, was the term used at the time 30 years ago. I suffered along with them on that gravel road. Yes, the city required me to put in a paved parking lot, and I did. We drove down that gravel road for 20 years before that road got paved. We're not trying to do anything to degrade that area. We're not looking to go get outside of B3 with a building. We're not trying to do anything other than put a stone parking lot there. If you pull up there, we turn off from asphalt. You pull into an asphalt driveway, an asphalt parking lot, and if we decide to unload a piece of construction equipment or something, we don't want to tear up an asphalt parking lot. We can unload on rocks, and that's all we've asked for is a rock parking lot. We're not asking for a rock driveway. We're not asking to build some building there that doesn't fit B3. We're not asking to do anything except put a rock parking lot there. Our neighbors have told us, we went to them to try and discuss what we were trying to do, and we're told we'll fight anything you decide to do. We went to our city councilman, and he told us, I'm kind of staying out of that. Obviously, he changed his mind at some point. He showed up today to throw us under the bus. But the reality is, all we're looking at doing is putting in a stone parking lot. Nothing else, nothing elaborate, and nothing to be detrimental to that neighborhood. We don't want to put some business there that's not part of a B3. We live there too. That little building right there on that corner has been our home. My son that spoke first put his handprints in that concrete parking lot when he was 4 years old. We've been right there, and we've been neighbors to these people for 30 years. Yes, we cut the trees. We marked them. We left all that we possibly could. We'll wind up planting more. We'll plant to meet the city's code. But yes, and I'm sorry that it opened up their neighborhood, but that's part of progress. It just happens. It just happens. Thank you.
Any questions of the?
I've got one question.
Yes, sir,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dillon.
Just as a clarification, just when you were talking, but you're not using this, right? Because in the report that we got, it said for an industrial contractor. So it appeared, I thought in reading it that there was somebody there.
No, sir, it is a tenant building that we'll build and lease. We are industrial contractors, but good gracious, go by and look at our place. We don't store cranes and heavy equipment. I mean, it is a small yard, but the place up on the corner is nothing more than a building that we'll build, lease. We don't know who will go there. We know they'll fit B3 because that's what the requirements are. And we're not looking to go outside of that.
But you can't say definitively that you wouldn't get a business that may have no use for aggregate at all, or maybe could use an asphalt. I mean, at this point, you just don't know.
We don't know. We just know that the typical building, the typical business that fits Halls Mill Road area loads and unloads things that tears up asphalt. We don't want to put an asphalt driveway in there, tear it up. We're loading and unloading things. If you'll notice on the drawing, which is hard to see, but I mean, we've got concrete or asphalt. We're in the concrete business. We probably have a concrete driveway. But you come in off the road on concrete, you park on for concrete. It's just back in the back where you've got where you turn trucks or whatever around. We need that to be stone. No more complicated than that.
Any other questions? All right, sir, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Before the board goes into discussion on this matter, I would yield to our counsel if you have anything that you'd like to advise us on at this point, sir.
Let me go,
Go ahead.
let me go back briefly to address Mr. Milling's question.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the application.
Yes, ma'am.
Page 3 of the staff report, the indented area in the middle, that's in italics, that's what the application stated. So I think that answers your question regarding the proposed use as presented to staff.
I can't and don't want to substitute my opinion for what the board has to consider. But it seems to me that, like Mr. Milling pointed out, no current use, no current occupancy, no construction. I'm not sure that any unnecessary hardship has been demonstrated from a legal standpoint.
Thank you, sir. Discussion of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say, from my standpoint, that's what I struggle with this application, because, I mean, I think we have approved, and I've been a proponent a good bit of aggregate uses in certain areas, especially out in the range line area and even Halls Mill area. I think, you know, from an environmental standpoint, if it's managed correctly, I guess the thing that surprised me today was just the fact that I thought we were coming in with a use and that use was defined, and that the defined use was one that, you know, would not work in asphalt, which is not, well, I guess, what the understanding is now. So that's my concern.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
believe
sir.
I would agree with Jeremy in that there are a lot of instances, I think, where it makes sense, but this one without a clear end user and in the addition of being so close to residential, I struggle with it myself.
All righty. Yes, sir.
And I'll just follow up with my comments that, again, with a clear use that, you know, was a proven hardship, which is the standard that we're held to, I think it would be possibly a different discussion. But, the fact that, we're somewhat to me, speculatively doing this, again, I don't know enough about your business. I don't know if there's a way, if you're moving forward to do a building and you're in the concrete business and you can do a portion of it and hold that site out, and come back. I'm just not sure, but that's my concern.
Yes, sir. Just a reminder to the board and everyone, we have an abstention on this matter, and it's going to take 5 votes for this to be carried one way or the other. Chair would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to go with the staff recommendation of denial.
Okay, motion to deny is before us. Is that second? Second? It's been motioned and properly seconded. You've heard it as stated. Are you ready to vote? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Hearing none, so ordered. Denied. All righty. Number 6264, 009372019, the Mitchell Company LLC, Christopher Sylvester, agent, 1004 Willwood Avenue. Please come speak, give us your name and address.
Good afternoon. I'm Christopher Sylvester with the Mitchell Company, 41 West I-65 Service Road, Mobile, Alabama. I come before the commission this afternoon asking for a variance in the Wildwood, subdivision. The existing structure on the lot I think you have this. You can see it up there. But basically, there's one house that transverses all 3 lots. If you look around the subdivision, all the typical lots are 50 feet in diameter, in width across the front, so they have 50 feet of frontage. This house has been there prior to most of the development that occurred in the neighborhood, and it's in pretty bad condition at this point in time. It's been kind of an eyesore, to the neighborhood. What we would like to do is to return this lot and put it in line with the other lots in the neighborhood and build 3 houses on 50-foot lots as far as frontage is concerned. One of the lots is actually impeded by the addition of the house on the corner of Chandler and Wildwood. You can see there's a small garage structure in the backyard. There was a little bit of a stagger in the lot to allow that to meet the setback. The garage was there before the house was. So there was an approval of a smaller lot size for the lot on the corner of Chandler and Wildwood to be constructed. So that lot is actually not 7,200 square feet either. So what we'd like to do is come in and build the 3 lots out with like houses in the neighborhood to continue the streetscape of the neighborhood with modern homes on the 50-foot lots. I know this is, kind of a odd request, to do it, but I think we have a good reason to do this. The pictures of the lot from the street actually look like this. This is what the neighbors are looking at across the street right now. It's very unsightly. This is the picture of the existing structure that doesn't fit the neighborhood in any manner, shape, or form. Our plan would be to demolish this home and then come back with the streetscape across the street and have homes that look like this. See, farther down the street. Proposed style of the new homes. The biggest issue that we're faced with on this project, and it's not uncommon, there's been exceptions to the lot size in the past in this neighborhood. The issue that we run into is just that one single lot is a little bit too small. And I'll reiterate my point from Chandler and Wildwood, that lot is also undersized. All three of the lots would be 50 feet across the front. You won't be able to tell from the front of the lot, looking from the street in. It simply encroaches a little bit on the back end of the lot to allow for that garage that was there before that house was built. My company's been building responsible, neighborhoods for a very long time. I think we could put in 3 homes here, which would make it more uniform, usual and customary in the neighborhood. And I think it would be a vast improvement to the neighborhood based on what's there today, which is a house that's not in good condition, a lot that's not in good condition, and it really looks out of place. If you just look at the drawing that we have in front of us, you can tell that house does not belong in this neighborhood. If we ask for your consideration in this matter, the homes will be built, to today's code with very aesthetically pleasing, amenities and fixtures in the homes. And I think that the Wildwood subdivision would be better off today, in the future, than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Millings?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
In reviewing the opposition, the comments in opposition on the city's website, it seems like one of the recurring things is that in doing this, it would create something that's uncharacteristic for that neighborhood. As far as the proposed houses that y'all are doing, how do they compare to currently what's there as far as size, aesthetic?
They would actually be basically the same size and probably even more aesthetically pleasing. They'd be a little more modern, but they would blend in completely. We want to identify with the streetscape that's in place so the neighborhood, has a very uniform look when it's all said and done. That's what it doesn't enjoy today. And like I said, from the front of the homes, this lot is 50 feet like the other lots in the neighborhood. Every single one of them, you go up and down the street.
Just one other question. As far as in looking at the aerial, it's interesting because you've got, it looks like this, large lot with a single-family residence on it, surrounded by smaller lots with houses that take up a lot more of the lot. It kind of, what's the history here? Is this something that y'all have developed around this, or is this kind of, do you know how this ended up this way?
Okay, that home was built prior to the initial development of the neighborhood. It's one of the first homes that was constructed in that area, so it kind of predates the existing development.
Thank you.
Mr. Milling, I can elaborate also a little bit. The Pinehurst subdivision, I believe, was platted in the 1920s, and it was platted having, I believe, 40-foot wide rights-of-way and 50-foot wide lots throughout. This house was obviously constructed across multiple lots, and I believe it was in the 1980s when the streets within Pinehurst actually started to get paved. So it was relatively recent that Pinehurst really began to build out.
And the other contributing factor, the right-of-way was also encroached, which makes the lots a little bit smaller, so that was kind of a double whammy for this one as well.
Any other questions of the board? Yes, sir, Mr. Burrows.
What would be, if the variance was not granted, what would be the disposition of this piece of land or the lot? It would just be sitting there idle?
If we can't get in there and really build 3 homes, to make it work,
Yeah.
I just don't know how interested, we'd really be in the land, to be honest with you. They would pretty much stay as is.
Well, I got my personal opinions, but might be contrary to what the code say, but I'd rather see a house have my own preference than a vacant lot.
Yes, sir, I agree.
But thank you anyway.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Anyone in favor of this application like to speak at this time? Anyone in favor? Anyone in opposition? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Discussion of the board?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff, and Bert, tell me if this is too burdensome, but I'd be curious, the people that commented against, how many of them live on 50-foot lots?
I did not research to see where they lived and if they also would be on lots that would be the same size, but that is an interesting question, yes.
I'd like to make one comment that, just in reading the staff report on page 3, under the applicant's, I guess, justification for the request, in the last sentence of the first paragraph, it talks about a reduced size from 7,200 square feet to 5,656. But in looking at the plat, it's 6,565. So I'm wondering if those got transposed. It looks like to me it's closer to, it's just under 77,000 square feet. Correct? And the only reason I bring that up is that in the application, applicant statement, that seemed like quite a disparity, but in actuality, it seems like that.
Well, the application, of course, is in the file by the vice chairman. And typically what we try and do is put it in verbatim, so it's possible that we did transpose.
Okay. But I guess in all actuality, it is this over 6,500 square feet.
Yeah, Mr. Milling, if you'll look, and geometry was not my forte, but the frontage of the lot is 50 feet,
Right.
but the rear is 42, so it's not a pure rectangle.
Right.
But the applicant shows that the actual area of that lot is 65.
Thanks. Which, and when I did it in real rough numbers, came up to 6,700 plus or minus, so that seems to me to be more accurate. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move for approval, Mr.
Hold on. Yes, sir.
Move for approval.
Did you want to say something before the motion?
No, sir.
Is that your motion? What, that's your motion?
He can have it.
Is there a second?
Second.
And that motion is to approve, right? Right, Mr.
Yes,
Coleman?
Mayor.
Okay. Heard the motion as stated. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposed is by the same. Hearing none. You have it, Mr. Sylvester. All right. The next item on our agenda, and I believe it is our final item, is 6265. 000938219 Harrison French and Associates Leticia, is that correct?
Yes.
Martinez, agent, 1970 South University Boulevard, and your applications here is from staff recommended for approval.
Correct.
Okay.
So my name is Leticia Martinez. Address is 1705 South Walton Boulevard in Bentonville, Arkansas. I'm here for the 1970 South University Boulevard Walmart. I'm just here to get an approval on the proposed signage. So currently on the Walmart Neighborhood Market, there is one main Neighborhood Market sign, and there is one pharmacy sign to the left. We would like approved the Walmart Neighborhood sign, a pharmacy sign on the front, and a pickup Spark sign on the front. And on the left side of the store, it would be the pharmacy drive-through, an enter and an exit sign.
Okay. Any questions of the board for the applicant? Anyone here in, and I guess just for the record, in favor of the application or in opposition? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Discussion of the board.
I guess I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
For the applicant or for staff or for us?
Well, I guess it's recommended for approval, subject to removing the asterisk by the pickup sign. And you're in agreement with that? Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Move properly seconded, diverted as stated. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposers by the same, hearing none. You have it. What else we have? Other business? Board of Zoning Adjustments meeting and application schedule is before us, and we just need some resolution on it. Move properly seconded, I'm thinking. So ordered. I assume all are in favor. Okay? All right. Thank you all very much for your tolerance of the chair. You did good. All right, thank you.